Welcome to the pre-agenda for Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. We have one appointment for today for consideration, and we are waiting for a quorum. We're good? Okay. And can we begin? We're going to begin, and I want to say welcome to Lee Schmidt, who's been the acting director of the Department of Public Safety. I am joined today by Councilwoman Erica Strasburger and Councilman Bobby Wilson. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 91, resolution appointing Lee Schmidt as Director of the Department of Public Safety.
And Director, I'm going to give you a minute to say some of the things you might want to say to address, to tell us about anything you want to share with us this morning about the position, or anything you want to share personally about yourself that you feel comfortable.
Sure.
And we're also joined by Councilman Coghill. Thank you.
Yes, just want to thank council for the opportunity to address everyone and speak, and the opportunity to become the Director of Public Safety. I've been with the city for 5 years now. I started in the Department of Public Safety 5 years ago as the business administrator for the Police Bureau. About 2 years ago, I got promoted to Assistant Director of Operations under Director Hisrich for Public Safety. I also, a few months after that, about 6 months after that, took on the role of Assistant Director of Administration and Operations both, and continued that until Director Hisrich resigned with the change in administration. My time prior to the city, I worked as a full-time medic for a full-time EMS agency in the suburbs of Allegheny County, known as West Deer Township. Out there, I was also a member of the Planning Commission, Parks and Recreation. I've had and I worked there for 20 years. That was a full-time 24/7 EMS agency, all full staffed. Initially, it was volunteer for the first 3 years I was there, and then transitioned to a full paid EMS agency. Throughout my time in public safety, I've always enjoyed serving the public and serving my community. In this role, I feel like the public safety director's position is to help coordinate both internally with our bureaus under public safety, as well as the other departments within the city, as well as community groups throughout the city. I have a big focus on customer service. I always have, and I believe that's a key in government, is we need to provide good customer service to the people we serve. And that includes listening to what they want, what they're asking for, having conversations, sometimes hard conversations with community members, and realizing that it looks very different for everyone, from neighborhood to neighborhood, even block by block, what they're asking for from the city, what they're asking for from public safety can be very different. My visions and policy thoughts are around accountability. Accountability for everyone. That means, and it doesn't mean discipline, doesn't mean focusing on all the bad things. It means people being comfortable to admitting their faults, admitting their mistakes, owning up to them, and working together with those in command and with the city and policymakers to improve that, to reduce the mistakes, to stop them from happening again or reoccurring. People need to be comfortable that they're allowed to come up and admit their mistakes without fear of significant discipline unless it's appropriate. But anything can be, I believe anything can be solved and talked through with conversation and cooperation. Nobody has to win. It just has to be what we can do is what's best for everyone. That's all I really have right now.
Thank you so much for your comments. We'll begin with Councilman Coghill.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Schmidt. So, really, my thing that's most concerning to me is the lack of recruiting classes with the police department. You probably know these numbers, but as of tomorrow, we could lose up to 250 police officers if they so choose to retire. We haven't had a recruiting class, I believe, for 2 years now. Don't know how many police officers we have on the streets as it is, but I'm just concerned that that level is going to go way down over the next couple of years. And I don't know if we have a recruiting class this year. So can you speak to that at all?
Sure. I know the recruiting class is budgeted. I've been talking with the administration about the need for a class. And I think we are working how we can best make that happen. We obviously have, everyone has concerns, and it's been a concern for a number of years about the diversity in our recruitment efforts. What can we do to improve that? I do believe we're all in agreement that we need to have a vision of that and get that in place before we proceed. But we also understand there is a need for a backup of officers, officers in queue coming up through as officers leave, that we can replace them so the zones don't go short. But there's a lot of things that have to be talked through with council, with the mayor's office.
Do you know how many officers we have at this point?
Right now, we are under 900. We had a retirement yesterday. I want to say we're at like 895, somewhere right around there.
What's a sufficient number in your eyes? Do you have a grasp of that?
Based on some previous staffing studies, but it's been a number of years since that's happened. 900 is what they had come up with then. I know I've been suggesting, and it is budgeted for a staffing study for this year to have that happen. So we are working through that. And I think a staffing study, a modern staffing study, would help evaluate our needs based on current demand and current status versus 10 years ago.
So once they go to a recruiting class, how long does it take to actually get them out onto the street?
If they're brand new and have never been an officer, you're talking about 11 months from the time they start the academy until the time they are completely off of field training and considered able to work, on their own.
Yeah, so we have, say, 895 now. Yeah, so we're looking at least a year before we can put anybody else on the force. You know how many are scheduled? I mean, I know there's 250 or so that can retire. So that's my concern, Director. It's about the amount of police officers that we have now and the ones that we're going to lose throughout until we get newly trained officers on the street. Now, if we have a recruitment class, is that this year? It's budgeted, I know, but so we're going to proceed, hopefully, get a new recruiting class this year.
Yeah, like I said, we're talking, the chief and I have been talking with the administration, talking about what that looks like, and how we can make it move forward.
It's very possible that we dip over the next year and a half, I would think, before we actually train and get police officers on the force, since we haven't even started the recruiting class and factor in the 11 months it takes there. It's very possible we could go down to 700 officers at that point, and we will be very severely understaffed, I think.
Yeah. When I started 5 years ago, we were below 800. And then 2 years ago, we were right about 1,000. So it can fluctuate a lot. It's just a matter of.
Firefighters, how are they? How's that class? Is it, they have I know because
Yeah,
it's
we have a
tomorrow, I
recruit
believe.
class graduating
Yeah,
tomorrow.
so we don't have that same issue with the firefighters.
No, they still have some recruitment diversity concerns.
Sure,
there,
I
but,
know they do, right.
Yeah, it's a different field, I think.
Yep. Okay, good job in the bridge collapse, addressing the media. I was watching you closely. I thought you handled it with poise and as good as you can in that situation. So those were my concerns, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt, for being here today, for answering our questions. I can see that you've been dedicated to public service and kind of civil service for a long time now. I'm curious, what drove you to make the jump to paramedic initially? Why did you seek, EMS and kind of paramedic as a vocation initially?
I'm not quite sure. Friends, actually. I
Okay.
had some friends that were on the ambulance service or EMS agency, volunteers. That was, back in 1996. And they kind of talked me into going to an EMT class, and I just really enjoyed it. I have experience. I'm an Eagle Scout. I was in Scouts for 20 years of my life. And then again, as a leader, once my kids were in Cub Scouts. So I've just always enjoyed helping people and trying to make the world a little better. So EMS was kind of a natural thing for me. I enjoy, again, just being there, being in sometimes stressful situations, but doing what I can to make them better.
Sure. No, thank you. I think that no matter what branch of public safety you come from, probably all of them in some ways prepare you for the stress of a public safety director position because it's pressure under fire. So I'm glad that that's your background. I'm curious about your sort of philosophy, and obviously so much of this flows from the direction and vision of the mayor, but your philosophy around the balance that's necessary right now in public safety between, as you said, calls from the community, but calls from different communities are different, and also even within communities are sometimes conflicting. I heard an interview with a representative from a community group in Knoxville yesterday who was saying we both get, when it comes to public safety, but I think she was primarily talking about police. She was saying we get both too much attention and not enough attention, right? And so there's just such a balance right now when it comes to creating a vision for public safety where people feel like public safety is there for everyone, keeping staff morale up, keeping people wanting to work for different bureaus of public safety, and probably having many different kinds of bosses, from all of us to the mayor to other people who are sort of asking you to do various things and pulling you in different directions. This is a long rambling way of just asking kind of if you have a vision or philosophy around balancing all of that.
Yeah, I do. With my years, working with other folks, working alongside police and fire and other EMS agencies, and even just city, morale can be tough. It's not an easy job. And I think the biggest thing in it, I've mentioned this to other folks. I think from my position, and maybe even some of the chiefs, we need to focus on our people. And when I say the people, I mean the people that work for us as well as the people that we serve, and let the providers and let the first responders do their job to the best of their ability, and we're there to support them. So that means also providing them the support they need. A first responder can see things that nobody wants to see. That impacts them, even if they don't want to believe it at the time. It can. We need to support them and help them, guide their education, give them services, let them know it's okay, again, to admit their mistakes, let them know it's okay to not be okay, to say to their supervisor, hey, this call really bothered me, or even just something in their personal life's happening. They should feel comfortable enough with their supervisor to say, I'm having a really bad day. I probably shouldn't be interacting with somebody today. And that might be a hard conversation to have, but those are conversations we need to have. From the public standpoint, I think we need to have similar conversations. Sit down, look at community members that might be disenchanted with public safety, or not supportive, and sit down and ask them why they're not. And sit down as fellow humans and just kind of talk through things and see each other as people that are all just trying to get along. And I know some of that sounds a little pie in the sky maybe, but I do believe conversations can bring people together, and understanding is a lot of it. Maybe just having open conversations to say, this is why we respond in this manner. This is why we don't respond in this manner. Some people, as you said, some people want the police there right away. and we can't be there right away for certain things. And other people don't want the police there at all, but we need to be there. So it's a matter of sitting down and explaining things and talking to people, getting the right people in the right place. There's a book that in leadership called Team of Teams. It's actually from Crystal was the author, but it's basically about putting the right people in the right place and empowering them to do those things. So you have police officers that are subject matter experts in different things. You can't, we have 2,000 public safety staff members. The public safety director, I can't do all their jobs, and I shouldn't be trying to do their jobs. I'm supposed to be supporting them, working with council, working with the mayor's office. So we empower the people that are the subject matter experts and that have passion for different things. And so find the people that have the passion to interact with the community and get them interacting. Have them teach their peers how to better interact with the community and be spokespeople and liaisons. Very, a little long-winded, but that's basically, my thoughts and philosophy on.
That's really great to hear. What really struck me about that is empowering leaders within in subject matter experts that have a passion for that area and really empowering them. It makes me think of air traffic controllers as an industry have a zero shame policy because their life and their work is so much about life and death that there's no room for error. But if you make a mistake, you can't be shamed for making a mistake. You have to come forward so you know how to fix it. And it sounds like it's a similar philosophy that you carry within this department, which is really important. And I actually think the work inside the department can then translate to work outside the department as well, and the relationship to folks in the community too. So it's great to hear. I don't have any other questions. I'll let others ask some questions as well. Thank you.
Jump in. Councilman Cross? Yeah. Hey, good morning.
Morning.
I'm sorry. No, who was before me? Come on. No, please. You go ahead. No, go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome and look forward to working with you. I think we spoke plenty of times about most of my concerns. And I'll just kind of reiterate them here. I think a community meeting I had last night kind of highlights some of my concerns. Not with you, just the future of public safety. Police do a phenomenal job, major crimes. They're doing their job. It's a serious situation. It should never happen. We need to keep guns off the street. We need to limit the type of serious activity. But in a meeting last night that I have with the community group, a great working relationship with Zone 1. They come a lot of car break-ins. So a lot of, I'm not sure it's not a major crime. And that's something that they handle. And they're given advice. But then the topic quickly goes to, not crimes. Homelessness is not a crime. So, and what is, circling around people that are outside is not a crime or should be handled in a different way. And so we've tried to implement certain things at the city here, specifically the AHM program. And so I'm able to quickly identify certain things in the meeting saying, okay, I hear you. People are struggling right now. They are outside. And, I couldn't imagine what that person's going through that has to seek shelter outside when it's 9 degrees out. And I'm able to report back saying that they're housed because of a program that we've implemented here, and we're working with a public health system to really work with people. And so the conversation is kind of overridden by that. And it's something that, I'd like to just hear from you, how we plan to continue to strengthen this team that we essentially, contract with to support public safety in a lot of ways. Because a lot of people, in the past, they would have reached out the public safety for this mostly. And people, I still think they still feel like they should do that. And so I just want to understand, because that is a big, I mean, would you say that is a big bulk of concern the community has, just circling around, whether it's drug use, whether it's people outside, how are we going to, change the tone of the conversation with the public, and how do we tell them what we're doing about it?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree that, people reach out to public safety about homelessness, about drug use, about a lot of things.
Mental illness.
Right. Public safety is essentially the boots on the ground, the eyes and ears for the city, because they're out there and the most prevalent. So they see a lot of things. There's challenges that happen with that. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And that's why I say this is when the program is a good example of a public-private venture that we can work to defer people to them. A lead program, law enforcement assisted diversion can assist. It's a matter of working cooperatively with other departments, even with PLI, with DOMI. The Office of Community Health and Safety currently oversees the AHN program and helps with a lot of that. We do have some officers that are very passionate, again, about homelessness and addressing those things. It's a matter of getting the right people in the right place. So getting officers that are interested in homelessness and interested in helping, working with the AHN team so everybody's safe. So then they're comfortable referring up and down the chain, figuring out what the hurdles are and the concerns are. CREA is always an issue that it is brought up, which is a state act about criminal history information and security of that information.
Yeah, I guess my to just make my kind of concern clear is just, as we move forward with all entities where you'll be overseeing EMS, fire, police, animal control, all these different entities, how are we going to make it known that this is, if you're on board with it, like, how are we going to make it known to all those departments that, we're going to, try and incorporate this as much as possible?
I think bringing OCHS more into the fold would help.
Mm.
We already have a liaison from fire, police, a couple from police and EMS on the OCHS team, working with OCHS on a daily basis.
Mm.
And they're essentially what I feel are the people that are going to go out there to the other providers to say, hey, this program can help us a lot, show that it's making a difference. Helping, EMS to not have repetitive, high utilizer patients, because you get those patients the help they need.
Mm.
Same with police, and police and EMS, fire, all of them deal with drug overdoses and drug abuse, helping get people the things they need. And we do need some statistics. We need some data to support it as well.
Mm.
I think our crime analysts do a great job of that. We probably need some other analysts within public safety to help support data to show that, because we can say that we're making a difference, but unless we really have the data to back it up, how do we know we're making a difference? And where aren't we making a difference? And data can show us that.
Mm. Okay.
Question?
Yeah, I just want to get a confirmation that that you'll be on board with trying to, implement this as best that it can be implemented.
Yeah, and I believe most of our public safety providers would agree. They don't want to cause harm to anyone. They didn't get into this field to do that.
Mm.
And they want to work to get people better, but they don't have the resources or the training to do it. So if they can find someone else that they can reach to and make a contact with, then that's where it comes in.
Mm.
And until the HN program, until OCHS, we didn't really have a great system in place.
How does that relationship work with a public safety director and, let's say, the chief of police? Like, do you have the authority to just like chain of command, direct them to how we will implement a program?
we have the authority, but I also don't know that authoritarianism it really works. It's more about getting the buy-in and figuring out what their concerns are. Just like legislation you all pass, there's always some people are dissenters. So what do we do to talk to each other about it? And I think that's very much my approach. Is if there's something I'm passionate about and something I feel needs to happen, we communicate that down through the chain. We talk through the concerns, we talk through the issues and say, what can we do? I don't want to hear what we can't do. Don't tell me, no, we can't do this because of that. What solution? Let's figure out solutions, not just put up a wall and say, no, we're not going to do this. Same with just the bureaus in general. I want to make sure there's not silos that they're not communicating with each other or they're working against each other without even realizing it. Sometimes it's just a matter of communication.
Okay. So, is there what's your major concern with public safety overseeing this department throughout the next, several years that, hopefully you'll,
Communication and accountability on all fronts. I think from top down, we need to better communicate with each other within each bureau, as well as between the bureaus and between the other departments. I think we have a good foundation here built from passion and people that love the job and people that want to make a difference. And I think we continue to grow on that, but we need to do a better job of working collaboratively and together.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely interested in a lot of what you've been saying in terms of especially like how you utilize the system, just bring that to light and really maybe, one day come to a solution for overdose prevention or overdose response, really, actually overdose response. So I'm just curious on the, sorry, I just had a question about that and then I'll be done. Basically it's just, with the overdose crisis right now, you see just the other day, there was a will of council to, have the Board of Health look at in their next meeting. So I think that's in March to look at the city of Pittsburgh becoming a needle exchange site. So, in terms of that, are there other ways that you see, especially with your background in the EMS, how we can be more impactful to reduce the amount of overdose deaths and overdoses and overdose deaths in the city of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot with the Narcan program. Our EMS is currently doing the buprenorphine pilot, and that's getting expanded already. Working with OCHS, that program started up, which allows our EMS folks to provide medication that helps with withdrawal symptoms for people that are in, addiction. And I think it can continue to be expanded. The needle exchanges, they've done them successfully in other areas. I think out of the box thinking, continuing to do the same thing over and over again doesn't work. So what can we do? Who do we need to bring in? And that's kind of where my team's philosophy. Maybe we need to talk to former addicts and bring them in, and talk to police, talk to EMS, give them a better understanding of what those patients are going through. And even people, advocates, general public, to help them understand that addiction of all different sorts can be challenging for anyone, whether it's gambling, drugs. Not that I'm saying that it's the same as a drug addiction, but there's still some of the same psychological triggers that cause that addiction. So I think it's through better understanding and better communication that we'll get there.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you.
I'll go last. Okay.
So before moving on to Councilman Kraus, we're going to do a quick roll call just so we can formally open the meeting since it's 10:25.
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross. Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor. Mrs. Cal Smith,
Here.
Ms. Strasburger,
Here.
Mr. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Lavelle, Chair.
Here.
7 members present.
Thank you very much. Councilman Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thanks for being here, Lee. A confirmation hearing for a public safety director. We're not doing you justice to bring you in here and talk to you for an hour. This is something we could probably take 2 or 3 days to really, really drill down into the depth of the kinds of things that we hear on a day-to-day basis, the kinds of things that we deal with, the kinds of concerns that our constituents have. I would like to, after I finish my comments and perhaps at the end of the meeting, maybe we could host a post agenda with the public safety director at a later date and have a more in-depth discussion of what's really going on, not to hold up your confirmation in any way or shape or form, but just to kind of drill down. My only question, I think, is really one more of a philosophical nature. The more I engage with the constituents, and it's really regardless of where they live and regardless of what their issue may be, I think there's a genuine belief out there that somehow, regardless of the problem, we're just going to arrest our way out of it. And when it comes to gun violence, especially the last year, since I've been here really, but the last year it has really, really ratcheted up. You're shaking your head, Councilman. And I spent probably an hour and a half on the phone with a constituent the day before yesterday, trying to convince her that we can't arrest our way out of this, that there has to be, I say this all the time, we plan our success and we police our failures. And I want desperately to create this mindset throughout the city that we manage success before we police failure. And so just sort of kind of curious about your thoughts about, and I don't mean to limit public safety solely to police, but right now police are living a very challenged existence, and very much so. I, try as I may, I cannot break through the wall of misinformation that the public has held on to, that claims that we're going to find a way to arrest our way out of problems. So can you maybe on that plane sort of talk about not just policing, but public safety in a very thoughtful, proactive, not reactive kind of strategy?
Yeah. So I know I've talked to different folks that I believe public safety and, some even say the city in general needs to become more proactive about people's needs. We need to, as you said, we can't arrest our way out of situations. It's not going to work. Putting more police into a situation doesn't necessarily help it either. It's more about proper planning. It in the South Side, that can be a challenge because of the structure and the number of bars in one location. Our group violence intervention folks get out there and they help, and we need the community to help us. We need the community to work together. I know the mayor's office has said this, we can't fix everything without the people helping us. So they need to be willing to come forward and feel comfortable coming forward when they are concerned about something. They also need to be willing to talk to their neighbors and maybe the children in the community, the youth in the community. Reverend Burgess does a lot of great work with that. We have our group violence intervention folks that get out there and talk to the community. And I think it needs to be prevention focused versus if you do something bad, you're going to go to jail, and that's supposed to mean something, because all that happens is you go to jail and then you come back out, but you're not ready to come back out into the society or into the community. You don't have a job, you don't have things, so then you end up with people, recidivism. We need to make sure we have programs that help people when they do transition from being incarcerated. so they don't, go back into that same cycle.
The, I wish more than, well, let me start by saying this. When now President Biden came to Pittsburgh for the Labor Day parade before he officially announced to run for president, I had an opportunity to speak with him. And he asked me who I was and what I do. And I said, Mr. Biden, I'm a city councilman. And he like reacted and sort of put his hands up. And it was kind of odd how he reacted. And he said, I have to tell you something. Like, okay. He said, I used to be a city councilman. I said, oh my God, that's great. He said, let me tell you something else. I said, sure, what? He said, it was the hardest job I ever had in my life. I'm like, sir, you want to run for president of the United States and you're telling me being a city council person was the hardest job you had in your life? He said, yeah, you want to know why? And I said, why? He said, because everybody knows where you live. And I bring that up to say we are that first point of contact for the public at large. And the conversations that I have, try as I may to broaden the scope of the conversation to talk about how federal law affects us, how state law affects us, how, we are kind of sort of at the last of the food chain, if you will. Probably more than anything else in the last year, what I've gotten from constituents is why am I not stopping gun violence? And try as I may to say, there are so many systems that have failed us before it reaches us. And I need to tell you about how those systems have failed and how we need to correct those systems to give me the power to be able to help you. People just don't want to hear it. They truly believe that we alone, as members of council, we have the sole power to correct gun violence. Even when I say things like, there are 343 million handguns on the streets. And no federal legislator or state legislator that's willing to take on how and why these kinds of guns are permeating the culture. When we first joined the council, Councilman Burgess and I, we passed lost and stolen handgun legislation. My Democratic state legislator, Harry Reedshaw, sponsored legislation to sue us for passing local gun ordinance, and not just to sue us, but to give the NRA standing to sue us so that we would pay all legal fees involved and fines that are involved for taking action on a local level. And trying to explain that to constituency that we feel the pain. We are really trying our damnedest to be able to help you in this problem. I don't think they see the bigger connection to other governmental agencies and how much we need partnerships with those governmental agencies to help us do what we need to do. So I say all that to say, how do we build better relationships? You talk about communication. Communication is not just speaking, it's listening. It's more important, it's listening than it is speaking. How do we get through to our state and federal legislators and the kinds of pain and anguish that are being inflicted on our citizens every single day through gun violence, and how our hands are effectively tied to stop the flood of guns that are at the heart and soul of the gun violence we're seeing?
That one's kind of a hard question for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really
it's
is.
not something you can fix. I think if we show some data to people and show them what we've tried and ask, and this is where obviously council and the mayor's office comes in, is working with federal legislatures, state legislature, governor's office, that kind of thing. But we need to provide you the information that you need to go to them with this. So
When
to say that
constituents say to me, what are you going to do about it? I say, what are we going to do about it? It's the we, it's not the I or you, it's us collectively. And that is us as electeds, our constituency as citizens, our local municipal government in cooperation with our state government and cooperation with our federal government. It takes all of us, right, to be able to do it. And how do we create that kind of environment by which people feel, the purpose of being engaged, and they find satisfaction in it and solution ultimately. I find far too often what I get to do is repeat the problem, and sometimes I just feel like my head's going to explode. I don't want to repeat the problem again. I want to talk about solution. What are the ideas for solution? Tough question.
I think we just have to have those conversations and like I said, sometimes they're hard. People have a right to own guns in the country. We just have to see what we can do to get rid of the ones that aren't legally using the right way. We need to work through that, like, as you said, together. And
It permeates every neighborhood I represent in the council district in some way, shape, or form. It takes different shapes and sizes and happens at different times of day and night and those kinds of things. But it affects every neighborhood that I represent. The one that you're painfully aware of, that it affects in a different kind of way, is the south side in Carson Street, because far too often alcohol is mixed with firearm, and that both are lethal combinations when used inappropriately or illegally, but the combination of them can be catastrophic. They really can be. And we had shots fired Sunday night on Carson Street outside of Flats again. And once again, it's a Monday morning. My phone's ringing off the hook. People demanding, what am I going to do to fix this? Tell me, what am I going to do to fix this?
I think work together with other people. You need their help.
So I would generally love to have a much broader conversation that in fairness to you and to us and to the constituency where we represent, because it is such, governments are formed for, basic fundamental reasons, turn the lights on, provide for the health and safety, peace and tranquility of the public, pick up the garbage, sweep the streets. It's fundamental government. And this one is, on the minds of all of us all the time. But thank you. I appreciate you being here. And I kind of got on a soapbox there, but sometimes we have to do that.
No, I think a posted agenda would be good. Bring some other people to the table and start some
Appreciate it.
conversations.
Thank you. Thanks, Lee, very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members?
I'll wait till I'm
Burgess,
first.
President.
No, you go first. I was chairing the meeting. I would have gone last.
So, Mr. Smith, we are grateful for your willingness to serve. Certainly, I will support your nomination, as I have said publicly. I will support all of the directors that the administration selects. I believe that the mayor, first African-American mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, deserves to assemble his team, and I will be supportive of that team. I'm going to say something backwards to go forward, I think. A different way, perhaps, of looking at this problem we have. There are 6 sort of ways or 6 phases of how we deal with crime. A way of looking at it is there are prevention programs, there's intervention programs, there's policing activity, there's prosecution activity, court system, there is incarceration, and there is reunification. If you simply look at the system and do the financial analysis, all of the money, the vast majority of money we spend on policing, prosecution, and incarceration. So we are getting what we're paying for. The system is designed to police, prosecute, and incarcerate. We have the highest incarceration rate of any developed country in the world. So it is not by accident. We are actually paying for the results that we are getting. We have done the war on drugs in the past. This outcome is not, it's not unforeseeable. when you have people who live in absolute poverty and you don't build housing, where the schools are failing, where they can't get employment. I mean, it is not surprising that they go to the underground economy where they can survive. So those are not your issues, right? That's sort of a broad-based issue. I do want to talk a little bit about, and I hope, as you know, we've talked privately. I look forward to partnering with you, Councilman Lavelle and I look forward to continue the partnering with you in terms of doing public safety. I will simply lay down my sort of view of this, and it may differ from other people, is that as we reimagine public safety must include not just the policing efforts, but the prevention efforts. Right. And so that means the GVI, the social workers in cars, the first responders that may not be police, all of those models of dealing with the homelessness and providing social services to those who are suspected or in high risk of being both homicide victims and homicide and those who use firearms, right? Part of the GVI model is you go to those people who are at high risk of doing violence and try to get them, who've had multiple arrests and multiple, incidents, and try to get them to turn their life around. And so I am hopeful that in the future, all of those efforts will be put under one umbrella. And I've told you this privately, I've told everyone who listened, and I could be wrong, it's just my belief. My belief is we should take the Office of Community Health and Safety, that should be part of the Public Safety Department and gives you an overall integrated, coordinated team that's dealing with public safety issues. And so those people would have the same clearances, they would be able to read police files, they would have the same public safety training that all the other public safety people have. And I think it would be a coordinated effort so that when we send them out versus police, we're still sending people who are trained with public safety background and maybe self-defense stuff or whatever it is they need to do their work, coordinated with the police so that it is one family. I know that's there may or may not be other positions, but I will be working with you and supporting that coordination. The theme of my really work for the next couple of years will be everything that I'm associated with. I will advocate for it being coordinated, comprehensive, and collaborative. Those are sort of my three pillars. Everything that I think about, whether it's housing, whether it's public safety, whether it's education, all the interventions must be coordinated, comprehensive, and collaborative in order to have maximum impact. So again, I'm sort of making a statement rather than ask a question because I've already tied it with you. You already have my support. I look forward to your tenure. I've had a close relationship, as you know, with the last three public safety directors. I was very close with the last three. And so I hope to be very close with you, work together, because this problem hurts all of us, right? This problem of crime, there's some kids that break into my car probably monthly, every other month, right? One of my cars gets broken into every other month. And if I leave my door unlocked, if I'm not careful about locking my door, when I go in the morning, they trash my car and looking for, sometimes I have coins, sometimes I don't, who knows? Whatever watches, whatever's in there that I've left in there from the gym gets taken. That's not a life or death issue. But for me in that morning, that's a significant thing, right? It's like, and so even these victimless crimes, or so to speak, or crimes that are not life and death, they still have impact, right? And all of us, every person deals with everybody wants to feel safe, right? For safe. And so I think it will take all of us working together to stop homicides, but there's also going to take all of us. The police cannot protect us by themselves. It's going to take all of us working together to reduce crime, to increase safety, and to have better outcomes for our citizens. So I look forward to working with you and with council to do that. So thank you for willingness to serve. I look forward to a fruitful partnership moving forward. Sure.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, one question. What is your formula, or what do you believe the formula should be for determining how many officers our city needs?
I think it needs to be a fairly comprehensive study. And again, it involves more than just me looking at it. I think it involves, and that's why I did, when Director Hisridge was here, we did push for that, and it is budgeted for a study to be done, or a consultant to come in and help us with that. I think we need to interview community members. We need to look at crime rates. It can't just be based on crime rates and population, though. I think it needs to be based on what the needs are and where we can most effectively use those officers and how we most effectively use officers. In general, we're very high. We have a higher ratio than most departments of officers versus civilians within the Bureau of Police. So we have a lot of officers that are doing jobs that could be done by a civilian. I think those officers could be out in the street doing interactions, doing the police work versus administrative work, versus doing some technology work. We could hire tech people, but a lot of that is going to require money. Some of that requires, our officers don't get paid as well as a civilian might for that same work. So I think it's not something that's easy to answer at the table right now, but I think it's something that I need to work with the chief, the command staff, and the officers in the union, as well as some outside folks to get a better assessment, make sure we're being effective with all of our employees
So,
with those tax dollars.
so we've set aside the dollars to do the study, but we haven't actually done the study, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we have to get the RFP in development and proceed.
Okay. I would like to, we don't have to do it at the table, but I would like to follow up with you offline to discuss that. Thank you. President Smith?
Thank you. And I'll be quick because I know everyone's waiting for a meeting to start. I'll try to be quick, but this is such an important position. And I realize that we're trying to give Mayor Gainey the team that he wants to have in place. But this is such an important position. I have some concerns. And so first, I want to say some of my concerns are with the Department of Community Health and Safety. I think we go so far to try to make sure that we're not arresting people, that sometimes we're creating victims in so many other ways. So I'm going to give, I think you're probably familiar with the situation in Mount Washington, with Fireman's Park, and there are a lot of homeless, well, they say they're homeless people, but some of them are not homeless. They're actually from Mount Washington and live there. But there's a lot of issues with mental health, drug and alcohol problems in Mount Washington, where a young girl was attacked or assaulted. A worker across the street was assaulted. So I went up one day to meet with the mayor's office, and one of the people tried pulling me out of my car, trying to break my window, pulling on the handle. So now I'm in court because of this situation. And what happened was I didn't know who he was. And then he started sending me really, obscene text messages and stuff. So then I realized I knew his grandparents and his family. So I called his uncle, And he asked me to please pursue the charges because they said they've been trying to get him help. And the only way they'll get help is if he's arrested. It was the only thing to save them the last time. And I remember, I think it's Khalif Ali came to, no, maybe, no, I'm sorry. It was Richard Garland came to a community meeting and he said, sometimes the only way you save people is by incarcerating them and then getting them the help while incarcerated. So that's a whole nother story that needs to happen, right? But my thing is, what do the families do when they need help? They don't want to see their loved ones arrested, but they also don't want to. So I just want to be clear. In that park where we've been working over the past year on, 2 people have died. Some people were arrested, citations have been issued, other people have been assaulted, and yet the problem still continues. And yet it's just a small part of the bigger picture. And so I want to know what we're doing to make sure we're helping the families get the help, how they can best deal with somebody with mental health, that we're not leaving them out of the equation. And I don't want any answers now. I'm just going to tell you that I have concern that sometimes we're creating more victims and that we're actually not helping those who really need the help by just allowing them to just wither, wait until they're ready for help. Because sometimes they're never going to get it. And in this case, in this particular area, we've already seen and know of at least 2 that passed away. And I've watched the officers respond. They're extremely patient, but it's not helping. I mean, it's not helping the people that need help, and it's not helping the businesses. It's not helping the residents going by there. So it's creating other victims. And so I just want to rethink that. Is there a time when, 1, we get the family help, and 2, where we change our thought process on how we're addressing at least a certain area or certain individuals, so that we're not just stuck on this is the way it has to be and that's it. Because sometimes the families are begging us to do something more so that they get help. So I just want you to think about that. I also want to talk about the diversity in the fire department. I have seen some of it increasing, but I think that's an area we really have to. I'm really concerned that we have 1 Black female firefighter, and she's getting ready to retire, I believe. So we'll have none. So I really hope that you're going to make a concentrated effort into recruiting a more diverse, not just in fire, but all across the board. But in particular, that there's only 1 female, Black female firefighter is concerning. But if the police officers, we're losing an average of 60 officers a year. It will take 2 classes of 35 officers each. And it takes such a long process. It's 11 months, and then basic recruits, have to stay on longer. So I think that we're looking at other officers from other municipalities or retired officers returning or whatever. If they have the 120 Act 120, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would ask is then, are we making more of an effort to get those officers? And the other thing I have a concern is we're talking about merging with Wilkinsburg, but yet I watch a woman come down here every week, twice a week, every week for at least 10, 15 years, talking about how her son was killed by officers in Wilkinsburg. So and I don't know the reality of all the details of everything, but what I would say is I would want to make sure that they're getting the same training that our officers have, even if they do have the Act 120, but that we're also adding and enhancing their training so that the expectation level is as high as we have for our officers. Is that something that we do provide?
Yeah. When we bring in we call it a certified class, which are officers that already have their Act 120. They have to go through additional training and field training with our officers. We don't just, put them out. So.
And then we're talking about doing more policing, community police, relationship building. But yet if our numbers continue to decline, so I just want to say it's imperative we get a class on, and that we do this in a better way. But I want to say if we continue to decline, we're not going to have the officers to do that community policing, because all they're going to be doing right now is responding to calls, 1 call after another. And I'm watching it happen now in our district, that they don't have time to stop and do the things. And we're taking officers off of that police community relationship work, and because they have to do they have to respond to calls. So I just want to make sure that this council, that I make it clear that at least myself, I'm really advocating strongly for an increase in that police officer class and that we put one on immediately. And that's, I really have a lot more to discuss, but I would like to talk to you before your final confirmation. I'm going to put it up for confirmation for next week. And I know Councilwoman Gross just coming. Did you have questions?
I just have like 1 or 2 minutes. I'll just summarize.
Gross?
Otherwise, I'm done. I just want to say you'll be up Tuesday for confirmation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was watching all the interviews back in my office, so I've caught up on everybody else's questions and your information. I just want to acknowledge that we met twice, once last week because you were on site at the Fern Hollow Bridge, and so we didn't have a good Zoom connection. And then secondly, this week on the phone. And we touched on some of the items that other members have asked about and that you brought up yourself, Director Schmidt, which was especially that ratio of officers in the total force. My office did some of the calculations that I've discussed with you before, comparing Pittsburgh to 15 other benchmark cities. On the ratio, I've talked extensively to Councilman Coghill about the same issue. I've presented some of that research at the police budget hearings this last year. So that we should be looking, I'm glad to hear that you will be kind of conducting a study about how do we allocate those officers' hours. So back in, I think it was December that we had the police budget hearing. We talked extensively about what are those costs associated with having civilians do some of the positions. When we hear complaints that we don't have as many patrols as we want, or in certain places in the city, and yet we have fully trained officers at desk jobs who aren't available to go and respond to calls. So how to readjust those hours, I think is going to be really critical. I also expressed my concerns about the $70 million project that is anticipated at the veterans site that the city has acquired. And I just wanted to note for the record that when we authorized the purchase of the site for $1 from the federal government, public safety training is not the only use that is allowed by the federal government. And we specifically asked, I think I remember Councilman Lavelle also asking, of the other allowable uses for that site, can the city change its mind? And can we just appeal that decision? And the answer was yes. So I did express my concern, given especially the amount of recruits that we train, pay for as a city out of our city budget, and then lose to other municipalities. So that there's really no reason for us to be training all of the police for the whole county on the city of Pittsburgh's budget. So I just wanted to kind of mention that we reviewed those things. We also reviewed some of my concerns about the way we are not doing animal control. Having experienced in Highland Park this past year, a house infested with rats for months while it was caught up in a state and there was no property owner to cite. And rat populations increased dramatically. And I can only imagine how many other instances across the city where we're not exercising our police powers to ensure public safety by taking care of animal populations. And I should lastly mention that I will continue to advocate for our current firing range to be moved and to be indoor because it is a constant nuisance for the residents of Highland Park. More than a nuisance, it's really becomes unbearable when we have these big recruit classes. They're of heavy, it's in heavy use and it really echoes up that valley and there's a lot of complaints and it's been a 20-year process of trying to make it a more livable situation. So I appreciate your attention and time to all of those topics. And that's all I have. I don't even need a response because we had a lengthy conversation about all of those things. I just wanted to mention it for members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Second round, Council President Smith, then Councilman Coghill.
I just want to also just real quickly mention that I appreciate our former director Historic for his work. He was an amazing person. I think you trained under him, and so that's comforting to know. But I do want to acknowledge that he did a lot for the city of Pittsburgh, and thank him for his service. And so far we've had really great luck with our public safety directors, with Huss, with Historic, And now with you, anticipate it's going to be a great year, great time with you too.
Thank you, Councilman Cockburn.
No, thank you. Mr. Schmidt, I just wanted to touch base on what Councilwoman Gross just brought up, which is really a stickler for me. I've talked to Director Hisrich about this numerous times, is the fact that we train our officers. We pay, I believe, last I checked, it was about $10,000 per recruit to get them on the street. I just feel it's such an easy fix to say they either, when we decide to train them with our taxpayer dollars, they either sign on with the city of Pittsburgh for 5 years, or whatever municipality is recruiting them from us must pay for that training. That really bothers me. I just can't believe that we're training them. No sooner are they done with training, they're eligible to go out and work for Peters Township or, any other police station that will have them or that's interested in them. So why we are training people for other departments and other municipalities is beyond me. And I know we're not the only training, but I know the ratio of police officers that we lose to other boroughs and municipalities per year. Staggering. It really is almost as high as, I think it might be higher than the retirement per capita. So if you could speak to that, and I don't know if you've given that much thought, and if you haven't, that's okay. But I just want to address this moving forward. It's a simple fix. You sign on for 5 years or the municipality pays us back. I just can't understand why we can't make that work.
Yeah, I know that's something that was discussed, my role previously in police, and even right now, because that position is vacant, it's myself and my staff that manage the numbers day to day, track the retirements, figure out the costs, which I can get you some more details on that. We do get some reimbursement back from the state for every officer that goes through the training. It's, I'm not sure what the percentage is now because I have been stepped away from it for a couple of years. But I'll get you that number. There are some processes in place that we could potentially look into to, if an officer leaves within the first couple of years, that the municipality they go to would have to pay us.
But we have that in place?
No,
Oh.
we could potentially have it in place. There is some state processes in place to allow for that. But it's not the full amount of their training, but some of their training. So I think it is something to look at. And the next step would be also to talk to the FOP and HR to see what type of agreements we could have officers sign. And if that's really beneficial, I think that's something that the chief and everybody else should weigh in on as well with council, just to find a little more information on that.
Yeah, I just need to know that's going to be on your radar screen. Let's fix this, please. One other thing was, having the requirements to be a police officer. You have to have a bachelor's degree. Is that correct?
No, 60 credits, so associates essentially. And that is something Chief Schubert and even Director Hisrich is here, we've been looking at briefly to figure out if there's a way we can provide those credits as part of our training. Others.
Yeah, that's
other
fine.
schools
Not,
do.
not requiring that they don't have the credits, but if we can provide it for them to get those credits while they're going through training, I'm so good with that. I myself am not qualified by your standards to be a Pittsburgh police officer, and I happen to think I'd make a great police officer. So I think we're limiting the pool of talent just by putting that associate's degree on top of everything, and might prevent them from even, filing for an application. So, but yeah, if you can work that out, I'm not against having that degree, or those credits, but make that part of our training, I would think. Okay, no, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers, that will end our pre-agenda meeting. And we will now transition to our standing committee agenda meeting. So thank you, Mr. Smith,
Thank
for
you.
being with us today. We have already called the roll. So I just want to say for the public's benefit, good morning and welcome to our standing committee's agenda. Council is continuing to encourage virtual public participation as there's limited seating in council chambers due to the number of COVID infections in our area. All our meetings will be live streamed on the city website and the city YouTube channel. Our next order of business is public comment. We have a number of registered speakers today. Our first being Naomi Mullen, followed by Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller.
Wow.
Hello. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. We, the people of Bon Air, have significant investment into our properties. We stand to lose significant value financially of quality of life reduction. The largest investment that the average American will make is their home. Our biggest assets are being threatened. This is why we as a community have expressed significant concern about the potential development of Bon Air School into anything other than a green space. We already had a valuable school stolen from our community. We deserve a valuable green space to replace it. The Pennsylvania Constitution states, under political powers, that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. Negligent infliction of emotional distress and blockbusting are being perpetrated by those who oppose our community. Real damages are occurring to the Bon Air community. I have no doubt that this controversy was a contributing factor to the demise of my husband. The PPS created this controversy against we, the property owners of Bon Air. My husband did his duty to promote the peace, safety, and happiness of the people he served. Will you, as elected public servants, do your duty to help the people of Bon Air? My husband, Michael, was duty-bound his entire adult life. He completed his mission on earth well. He is now one of the watchers and helping in the spiritual realm. He is still a force with us. A neighbor wrote, I think one of the best ways we will honor him is to keep fighting for Bon Air and be kind to our neighbors. We will commit to that, I promise. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. Michael Mullen Memorial Park.
Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller, followed by Akahana Halmalkina.
Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller, Belsuver, East Liberty, Jackson, Mississippi. Masaru Lesotho. I found this today to be extremely valuable as a citizen, particularly the comments that were made by Mr. Burgess, Councilor Burgess, and Councilor Kraus. I'll have more to say about that in the future, but thank you very much. GIS US National Candidate 2024, Global Intelligence Society.org. February 2022 is African Intelligence Month. Audra McDonald, high IQ, Cardi B, low. Black history as a concept is more dependent on other non-Black history lines. Positive information more deeply intertwined with negative, so identity is confused and diluted. African intelligence as a concept, in my view, is less dependent on non-African forms of reasoning, intelligences. So there's more positive information as distinctive of regional forms and easier to isolate and diffuse. I find the concept of race far less scientifically supportable than region derivation, genetic cultural descent from a geographical regional over racial identity. The concern of this council is Africa. And I and the GIS are seeking a link with Masaru, capital of Lesotho. Some comparisons with Pittsburgh, I think, are very interesting. Masaru has a population of 330,000. Pittsburgh compares with that at 300 mid-sized cities. Both Masaru and Pittsburgh are landlocked, hilly valley cities with mountains on three sides and waterways. Fort Masaru, like Fort Pitt, is the British military origin of Masaru and Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh, Masaru has a council mayor government, but unlike Pittsburgh, the mayor presides the council and may be removed by Lekotla, the council, via majority vote. Masaru, like Pittsburgh, has a substantial darker-skinned African population, but unlike Pittsburgh, 1% lighter skin. Like people in Pittsburgh, Masaru people dress for cold winters, but unlike Pittsburghers, Masaru wear blankets, so richly rainbow-colored in complex patterns, signifying individual identities, that the Basotho blanket shows up in 2017 in a Louis Vuitton fashion show and in the 2018 films Black Panther and Avengers. It also has significant resources like we do. I think we should create a Three Rivers bottled water company.
Our next speaker is Ikohana Halmaukina, followed by Christopher Watts.
Let's say something after. Let's go say.
Greetings of peace, light, and love. In my title is Ikahana Halmakina. I am the Grand Inca of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American People. I am also the chief of my nation, the advocate for my people, the American Aborigines. We are the Rotanil Sumi. We are the Onkwe Homwe. And we also are the most marginalized group of people, not only in the city of Pittsburgh, but throughout the world. Yet we are ignored when it comes to aid, relief, and redress. With a spotlight on social injustice, I would like to urge the City Council to consider public safety of Indigenous people in this area. We have autonomy to hold sacred our great law of peace, which was used as the foundation for the Constitution, for the formation of the U.S. Constitution, as described in Senate Con Res 76. We look forward to opening up dialogue about how to move forward to protect Indigenous people. I would like to acknowledge Pastor Ricky Burgess for always speaking intelligently and firmly about the plight of the so-called Black people when it comes to resources and the distribution of resources to that particular demographic. Resources are available, as Ricky Burgess stated, but are in limited capacity when it comes to Black and brown people. When Europeans have been given 100 years or more of free labor, of course you're able to contribute to the tax base and to the current generational wealth of those who come behind you. Just a moment. Yeah. Okay. My apologies for the pause. To create businesses with the inequities that persist. I respectfully disagree with Councilman Kel Smith her comments when it comes to how the system applies to our people when in reference to other people, because it's not equitable. And those are the points that Mr. Burgess had pointed out. The system is designed to keep us out and to keep us down. These systematic approaches need to be readdressed. Policing, prosecution, and then prison. How about we reverse that and do preventative programming? We must implement some preventative programming in order to change the narrative.
Thank you. Next, we have Christopher Watts, followed by Abigail Gildia.
Good morning, council members. My name is Chris Watts, and I serve as the Vice President of District Development at the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, where I oversee our planning, economic development, mobility, and placemaking activities. I'm speaking today to affirm the PDP support of Resolution 2022-0073 on outdoor dining or retail activities in the public right-of-way, introduced by Councilman Wilson. As many of you know, downtown has been significantly challenged by the pandemic, with over 20% of small businesses closing since March 2020, resulting in over 20% retail vacancy. Small businesses are vital to the fabric of downtown. It makes streets interesting and active, with retail vacancies serving as a primary metric to evaluate the economic health of a place. Restaurants and bars make up most of half of downtown small businesses, and they have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. With 63% of all closings in 2021 being restaurants, and that number was 52% in 2020. The ability for restaurants to leverage outdoor seating when restrictions were enacted have been essential for their survival. It has provided an option for many individuals who are still uncomfortable with indoor dining to enjoy the fantastic restaurants who call downtown home. Outdoor dining has also added much needed vibrancy to the downtown streets, which have been especially important to residents and visitors as daily activity remains below pre-COVID levels. In downtown, over 30 businesses have used the emergency permits issued by the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure to deploy outdoor dining over the last 2 years. We have received unanimous support from participating businesses to make their outdoor dining areas permanent. Feedback from businesses also included many responses saying that without this program, they may not have stayed in business. We also know outdoor dining and the activation of small businesses is something that residents, employees, and visitors have expressed strong support for. The PDP launched their biannual residential survey last week, and from over the 220 respondents we received already, the presence of downtown restaurants and bars ranks second in having the greatest positive impact on their quality of life after walkability. The PDP is looking forward to supporting continued outdoor dining along the Penn Avenue, 6th Street, Market Square, and Strawberry Way corridors. And in order to invest the resources required to deliver the necessary infrastructure for higher quality and more functional outdoor dining, we need clarity on the long-term viability of this program, which this bill provides. We are grateful for the previous commitment of council of $1 million to the URA from the allocation of the American Rescue Plan funds to go towards supporting business districts and implementing enhanced outdoor dining. We've been working closely with the URA, DOMI, the Office of Nighttime Economy, and business districts throughout the city in crafting a grant program that will create guidelines that leverage best practices in outdoor dining and empowers neighborhoods to activate their streets with the appropriate parameters in place. Although the $1 million is certainly welcome, it is likely still not enough to adequately support the needs in downtown as well as throughout the 90 neighborhoods across our city. We appreciate your consideration of this important issue and we feel is essential to the continued recovery of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Ms. Gildia, followed by Kate Irvin. Abigail Gildia.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Abby Gilday. I'm the Business District Manager for Lawrenceville Corporation, and I'm here on behalf of LC. LC is an organization serving as a catalyst and conduit for responsible growth and reinvestment in a neighborhood, which serves as home to hundreds of small businesses. LC works closely with the neighborhood small business community. This legislation has been a relief for our businesses who have been forced to overhaul their operating models while continuing to keep employees and customers safe in order to stay open for business. Our business owners along Butler Street and Penn Avenue want to welcome neighbors and visitors into their business. However, the ability to do this has been strained and at times impossible over the last 2 years. Chapter 425 allows owners to run their businesses safely while offering a dining and/or shopping experience to everyone, no matter their comfort level. Our Main Street businesses are the heartbeat of our neighborhoods, but our sidewalks are the blood that keeps them going. This program fosters a vibrant pedestrian experience, and we experienced this firsthand in 2021 when over 10 Lawrenceville businesses utilized this temporary program. While businesses have expressed to us that financial support has been most critical in the wake of COVID, the city's temporary flexibility in permitting outdoor sales and activity was repeatedly acknowledged and noted as one of the positives coming from what has been a challenging period for business owners. This legislation is a step forward in creating safe, accessible, vibrant business districts. Open air seating and shopping is often seen in other cities and countries and encourages a pedestrian-friendly experience, which is important as more and more people move back into the city center and as we work to prioritize people and accessibility in our Main Street corridors. LC has taken advantage of the temporary legislation by partnering with local artists to support the Lawrenceville pop-up artist markets. Originally founded to support the many local artists and small businesses impacted by COVID-19, the markets have grown in vendors and in physical location with markets along Butler Street. Because of this legislation, we are able to operate open-air artist markets along our Main Street. This legislation speaks to the demand of versatile offerings to the 21st century urban dwelling consumer and resident. And while we're grateful for this legislation, we do call upon City Council, committee members, and city departments and agencies to continue conversations around what we can do to better support our small businesses through process and permitting, financing, and more. We would also be remiss in not sharing that as a neighborhood with a state-owned and regulated Main Street, we encourage the city of Pittsburgh to find ways to streamline processes and communication with PennDOT so that our small businesses in Lawrenceville are able to benefit from special events that enable businesses and community groups to creatively repurpose the right-of-way temporarily to support businesses and other community priorities. In conclusion, we are in full support of this legislation and believe it lays a foundation for us to build, curate, and grow accessible, healthy, and 21st century business districts for consumers and business owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Irvin, followed by Georgia Petropoulos.
Good morning, council members. I'm Kate Irvin, the Director of Placemaking and Activation for the Oakland Business Improvement District. I'm also speaking today to affirm our support of Bill 2022-0073 on outdoor dining and retail activities in the public right-of-way. Outdoor dining has been an essential way to support small businesses and maintain vibrancy in Oakland as well as across the city of Pittsburgh the last 2 years. As the pandemic has continued, we've seen how outdoor dining and retail combine a number of essential elements: support for small businesses, activating public spaces, and creating vibrant neighborhoods. In speaking with many of our business owners, it is clear that the outdoor dining program has helped these businesses survive the last 2 years, but those difficult times are not past. I would like to take this time to share with you some comments from a few of our business owners who could not be here today. Per Maury Mendelovic, partner in the Marrow Restaurant Group, which operates 4 restaurants in the city of Pittsburgh, the outdoor dining program has been a critical lifeline for us during the pandemic. It allowed us to continue operating while maintaining the health and safety of our staff and customers. We were able to keep more of our staff employed during the restrictions of the past 2 years. The feedback from our customers has been overwhelmingly positive as they enjoyed this new outdoor dining option. We believe making this program permanent is essential for the restaurant industry that is still recovering, and it will be a net positive for the customers and neighborhoods where they operate. We've seen the impact it can have, creating a more vibrant and dynamic outdoor environment for these neighborhoods. We strongly support making this program permanent. Brandon Smith, owner of Fuel and Fuddle in Oakland, adds that outdoor dining is important to continue because so many people are still uncomfortable going indoors. Businesses are hurting. With the current Omicron surge, we've had one of our worst winters ever because no one wants to dine indoors. We need outdoor dining. Some people are never going to want to dine indoors again, and we need to have the flexibility to weather the pandemic waves and provide safe spaces for people to socialize, eat, and shop. Ting Yen, owner of Adarashi in Oakland, adds, the sidewalk in front of my store isn't large enough for outdoor dining. Without the parking lane closure, we couldn't do it. Closing the entire parking lane and not just the space in front of our business really helped. Creating multiple outdoor dining spaces along the street created the ambiance, and it helped draw people not into just our business, but all the other businesses along the street. Outdoor dining continues to serve as a lifeline for our small businesses. With the council's commitment of $1 million of funding from the URA and the allocation of the American Rescue Plan funds aimed at enhancing our outdoor dining and retail, we have the opportunity to develop well-designed, accessible, safe outdoor spaces that will continue to support our communities and local businesses. The appetite for these outdoor spaces continues to grow, and they continue to help support our small businesses while creating vibrant public spaces. OBID has been involved in the development of the grant programs from the URA, and we continue to work with other business improvement districts and community groups throughout the city to support these programs. We appreciate your consideration of this important issue, which we feel is essential for the continued recovery of our communities. Thank you for your time.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Hello? Hello, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I was supposed to be speaking right now. This is Maria Cohen. Members of, can I go ahead and start?
Yes. I'll come back to you, Georgia. I apologize.
I apologize, Georgia. Would Georgia like to go first?
Maria, we can hear you. Please
Okay,
proceed.
great. Thank you. Sorry. Members of City Council, good morning and thank you for being here to listen. My name is Maria Cohen. I am a longtime city resident and the executive director of the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition, SHOOK. Today, I am speaking on behalf of SHOOK and our Business Chamber of Commerce Uncover Squirrel Hill. Clearly, the pandemic has been a very trying time for restaurants and other retailers to survive. The ups and downs and turbulence have unfortunately put many of our businesses and others who have survived are still struggling. Just last week, the media reported the demise of the almost half-century tenure of our Eaton Park and of the iconic Pamela's restaurant. These are only two of the latest in the growing list of restaurants we have lost. It is important that we as a city do everything that we can to support our restaurants and other struggling businesses to make it through these very trying times. During the pandemic, it was very helpful to many floundering restaurants and other businesses that the city of Pittsburgh streamlined its review process of outdoor dining and retail to accommodate COVID safety measures under an emergency declaration in order to support businesses during trying economic times. Our world, nation, city, community, and businesses are still facing serious uncertainty. SHOOK is in support of passing legislation to continue the streamlined process, although emergency declaration has expired, in order to help and support businesses to save money and hopefully have the opportunity to thrive when the economy stabilizes. Squirrel Hill has several restaurants currently offering outdoor dining options and two that were helped by Domi's streamlined process. The option to offer additional seating during the pandemic made it much safer for diners and restaurant workers, and also has supported other communities. It has also made it possible for some restaurants to keep their doors open more economically and safely. We are still in a very fragile economic time. Making this legislation permanent will help the restaurants and businesses who are currently utilizing outdoor spaces to seamlessly continue reducing disruptions. This will save restaurants and retailers money at a very critical time. Outdoor dining and retail can help to maintain the vibrancy of business districts and economic development in our neighboring communities. The safer consumers feel, the more apt they are to go out to dine and shop. During the pandemic, diners and shoppers have demonstrated that they are more likely to support establishments that they deem safe. Outdoor dining and retail options make distancing much easier and more effective. In summary, SHOOK supports the passing by council of legislation to continue the streamlined process for outdoor dining and retail spaces to support Pittsburgh's restaurants, retailers, and other businesses.
Thank you. That will take us back to Georgia Petropoulos.
Good afternoon, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Yes, this is Georgia Petropoulos. I'm the CEO of the Oakland Business Improvement District. Thank you for taking the time out today to hear this great cause. As you just heard from Kate Irvin, our Director of Placemaking and Activation, the OBID is 100% in full support of this legislation. And she spoke very eloquently along with many of my colleagues here today about the reasoning why. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm just going to add a few more things for everyone to think about. Obviously, yes, this program has been and will continue to be essential for our businesses, for the economy, for the livelihoods that they sustain. Businesses sustain their own family livelihoods as well as many of their employees, and also for the community as a whole and for the city. But our industry also tends to use the word customers. And what I really want to reiterate is when we say customers, we're really talking about all of us. We're talking about us as people, as individuals, as members of community. Think about yourselves or your family members or your friends when you choose to dine or to support a dining establishment. one of your first responses would likely be outdoor, under the sunshine, being able to people watch. These are the types of things that creating a fantastic experience in Pittsburgh for our restaurants are in essence creating a wonderful experience for each of us and all of us who will participate. So we now have a chance to continue what we learned in the last 2 years, that outdoor dining is not only successful for the restaurants, but really it's been successful for the community. And no doubt in Oakland, we have heard from business owners, we have heard from people who have been participating in the program and in the dining, and we've even heard through all of the outreach that the Department of City Planning did as part of the Oakland Plan process. Many residents and many stakeholders that participated in surveys were wildly loving this project, loving closure of streets, loving closure of parking lanes. They said it actually added great benefit to the community. So I wanted to reiterate that and wholeheartedly, please, we ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Candace Gonzalez, followed by Lauren Brinchek. You're currently on mute, Ms. Gonzalez.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Candace Gonzalez here, the Executive Director for the Southside Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to tell you on behalf of the Chamber that we thank you for this opportunity to support the proposed ordinance amendment for improved outdoor and retail activities in public rights of way in Pittsburgh. The Southside Chamber of Commerce is an advocate for businesses located in the Southside, including the historic Southside Business District. There are about 600 businesses in the South Side, and about half of them are located along or adjacent to East Carson Street. Many of them have restaurant and retail operations that can serve their customers on our sidewalks and curbsides, as proven by the temporary outdoor business operations that were created during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Southside Chamber of Commerce supports the city's proposed amendment to codify an umbrella outdoor retail and dining license that can apply to public sidewalks or streets. It is our understanding that the updated code will reflect new successful practices introduced during the pandemic emergency orders to help businesses adhere to the COVID-19 safety protocols by expanding their business operations into sidewalks and streets. It often has taken a long time for our businesses to figure out how to apply for approvals and permits and get responses from live city personnel to get outdoor business activities approved and permitted by the city as required. This has been a hardship on our small businesses as they struggle to maintain enough employees to stay open. Having a more organized and streamlined approval and permitting process for outdoor business activities will help our businesses to operate more efficiently. Better business operations mean better profits for our businesses and more taxes paid to the city. As the pandemic continues, people feel safer and more comfortable to enjoy outdoor dining and retail shopping. This gives business owners greater flexibility to serve their customers, comply with decreased indoor occupancy seating, and keep their businesses open. The Southside Chamber of Commerce recommends that the Public Works Standing Committee approve the proposed amendment for outdoor or retail activities in the public right-of-way, and that the full city council also approve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lauren Brinjak, followed by Michael Trioni.
Good morning, council members. My name is Lauren Brinjak, and I am the Senior Director of Government Affairs with the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. We represent over 560 operators in Allegheny County and more than 4,000 members statewide. The PRLA supports Councilman Wilson's proposed legislation to make outdoor dining and retail a permanent feature in the city. We really appreciate Councilman Wilson's efforts and the committee's consideration of this important issue today. As you all can imagine, the last nearly 2 years have been extremely difficult for operators in the hospitality industry. Even as COVID mitigation restrictions have and continue to be lifted, The big picture in terms of restaurant recovery is that our operators continue to face very real challenges. Our national partner last month released some Pennsylvania-specific results from its latest COVID-19 restaurant impact survey. As you can imagine, the pandemic continues to negatively impact business conditions across the state. For example, 93% of restaurants have experienced a decline in customer demand for indoor on-premises dining recently. 56% of operators have reduced hours of operation. 59% have closed on days they'd normally be open, and 22% have reduced seating capacity. With all this in mind, we believe Councilman Wilson's proposed legislation to make outdoor seating permanent in Pittsburgh is a practical solution to continuing Pittsburgh's outdoor dining scene and really an essential part of the new path forward in the city to both retain and attract businesses. The ordinance creates a permanent and regulated process that allows flexibility and ensures consistency for operators, while also addressing safety, traffic, accessibility, and other concerns for residents and businesses. It was the city's willingness to allow the temporary construction of these sidewalk cafes and streeteries that was essential to allowing businesses to continue to operate during the pandemic. And as a result, we saw very quickly how creative our businesses could get. And it turns out that both residents and visitors seem to enjoy this new and unique dining experience. So the proposal being considered today comes at the perfect time for restaurants. As I just described, our operators continue to face new challenges every day. And so we believe that the continuation of outdoor dining is a vital part of restaurant recovery in the city of Pittsburgh. And we're very happy to voice our support. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to Michael Trioni, followed by Meg O'Brien. You're currently on mute. I believe it's *6 that takes you off of mute. Yep. Stars. You're still muted, Mr. Trioni. Let's move on to Meg O'Brien, and then I'll come back.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Meg O'Brien, and I'm the Director of Economic Development at the Hilltop Alliance. I run the business district programs in Allentown's East Warrington Avenue corridor, as well as Mount Oliver and Knoxville's Brownsville Road corridor. I am here to echo a lot of the other commenters this morning in support of the legislation for outdoor dining and retail. This will help small businesses with their operations and provide more opportunities for outdoor customer service. The past year has highlighted how important outdoor experiences have been. In Allentown, we've been doing outdoor markets, and one this past fall, the Allentown Night Market had over 1,500 visitors. I think, as others have highlighted, outdoor experiences are extremely important for small businesses, and thank you for your consideration and letting me voice my support.
Thank you very much. I'll try to go back to Michael Trioni now. You're still on mute. So Mr. Trioni is our last registered speaker. If I see you come off of mute, I will come to you. But with that, is there anyone in chambers and or online who wishes to speak? If you're online, raise your hand. If you're in chambers, please come forward, provide your name and neighborhood for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, Madam President and other members of council. My name is Mike Mitchum. I live at 116 Carroll Drive, McMurray, PA. I am the operations director with Permane Brothers Restaurants many of which are located throughout the city of Pittsburgh, Southside, Garfield, Oakland, Market Square, and of course, the Strip District, as well as our home world headquarters of our corporate office in the Southside neighborhood. I also sit on the board of directors for the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. However, I'm here today as a member of the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. I serve as the president of the Western chapter, as well as I sit on their state board and also part of their government affairs committee. I had intended originally to introduce a few speakers ago, Lauren Brinjack, who is the newest member of our Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association team in her newest role as Senior Director of Government Affairs. As you have heard with her and many other testimonies, all of which provided some granular content and how the ability of outdoor dining and retail, not only in Pittsburgh, but across the Commonwealth, is vital to the livelihood of restaurants in and around Pittsburgh and the Commonwealth. So I wanted to thank you to, and you'll hear this in the Public Works Committee papers coming soon. Thank you to Committee Chair Coghill and as well as sponsor Wilson. Lauren, thank you for your prior comments, and we all look forward to your further consideration of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional speakers? Please come forward.
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live up in Katy, Lever, Irvis Tires, up in the Hill District. Now, citizens, you know, when I come down and I make statements or make complaints, it's just that I'm wrong in the things that I say. But if I can't find out when the meetings are, then it's you're wrong. I'm going to show you what I mean. Now, this is last week, February the 3rd, and it goes February the 8th at 10 o'clock and then 1:30 cable. Then it says February the 9th, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock meeting. Today, when we come, Wednesday the 7th, the 9th, 9:30 meeting, you didn't start till, oh, wait a minute, was writing it down, about 10:25. But you know, you said you're a lawyer. You told me, Ms. Smith, your lawyer was sitting here. Sir, if you're sitting in here, why won't you tell them that they're breaking the law? They're not following their rules. Now, I sat through all this, and then when I sit through it, then they don't want me to speak anyway. Another thing I want to say, Ms. Smith, I love you, but when you're wrong, you're wrong. And like I say, wrong don't hurt, and right don't bother nobody. Yesterday, that lady spoke about the tavern. She spoke quite a bit. Then after that, you took and came back to her again. Do you want to speak again? I get 3 minutes. Yes, you did. Look at it, Miss Smith. Now, you know I ain't going to lie on you because you do seem like you care about us. You're not like the rest of these. Some of these act like thugs. And I try not to get upset because when I do, then I speak the real truth. And I'm not allowed to because Mr. Burgess will say, you can't talk like that. How dare him tell me that? And when you sit there and lie, when you say about how you're fighting for the Black people, when you don't fight for me, you made sure that you don't. And you made sure that I couldn't speak. And I'm still mad. You just don't know how mad I am. Anytime I come down here, sit all these hours, I sit longer than years, and I can't speak by 3 minutes. 3 of them can speak at the same time. 3 of them can interrupt me and nothing happens to them. You know what, lawyer? You need to tell them that they need to be fined $50 anytime they open their mouth if it ain't their time.
Thank you. Any additional speakers wishing to speak before City Council, please come forward or raise your hand if you're online. Any additional speakers? Seeing none, that moves us to our standing committee agenda. Our first committee of the day is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. Our first new paper is Bill 60.
Bill 60, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant
in favor of Judith Pearson Nolan, Stephen Nolan, and their attorneys in the amount of $150,000 in full and final settlement of litigation filed in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County.
Motion to approve.
No motion. to hold.
One for hold for executive session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It will be held for executive session. Bill 61.
Bill 61, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant payable to Petrogallo, Gordon, Alfano, Bostic, and Rospinski for professional legal services in connection with civil rights litigation for an amount not to exceed $9,225.
Motion to hold for executive session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It will be held for executive session. Need a motion to approve the invoices?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
Moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Safety Services Committee chaired by Councilman O'Connor. One new paper, Bill 62.
Bill 62, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant in favor of Trick Bicycle in an amount not to exceed $112,699.76 for electric bicycles provided for the Bureau of Police Bicycle Unit.
Motion to approve.
Yes, second. Very, very brief discussion, please.
Discussion, Councilman?
Just, Madam Clerk, maybe, so not to prolong the meeting, if we could find out the number of bikes that might come out of this allotment and an approximate cost for each bike. And I believe that being that they're electric, that they're pedal assist, which I think that's where the department's moving, which I like very much. And that would be very helpful. Thanks, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Public Works Committee chaired by Councilman Coghill. First new paper is Bill 56.
Bill 56, resolution vacating a portion of Forbes Avenue laid out in the Associate Congregation Plan, recorded in Plan Book Volume 1, page 95 in the First Ward, 6th Council District.
A motion to hold for 4 weeks.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill will be held 4 weeks. Bill 57.
Bill 57, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to execute relevant agreements to receive grant funding from the Recycling Partnership, Inc., to conduct public outreach surrounding the city's recycling program and to purchase containers for curbside residential recycling collection, and further providing for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $650,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 58.
Bill 58, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement or the use of existing agreements between the city and Sufisara Potra Coleman for the creation and installation of public art at Chartiers Spray Park at a cost not to exceed $11,000.
Motion to approve.
Second. Very, very brief discussion.
Discussion, Councilman?
Madam President, is this yours?
It is.
Yeah, congratulations. It's, I think it's your first spray park, is it not?
It is our first spring.
Yeah, good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I just.
Yeah,
briefly, I
I'll
just want-
defer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to thank the people that served on the committee to select the art from the neighborhood. And I want to thank Callie Baker and all those who have been working on all these projects for us.
They
Thank you.
make a profound difference. They
We're so excited. Can I just say Chartiers City, I tell people this all the time, is one of those neighborhoods that people need to know more about. It is predominantly Black. It has the highest home ownership in the entire city of Pittsburgh. About 90% of the properties are homeowner occupied properties and at low crime. And they set the bar so high. And so I'm glad to see that they're finally getting some things back with this spray park, Avenues of Hope, and some other things. But this particular park will have hundreds of kids that play there, that play sports there. So it'll be definitely be used throughout the year. And it also is next to Chartiers Early Childhood Learning Center.
Congratulations, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councilman
Just
Coghill.
real quickly, Madam President, is that what I know as wind gap?
So Wing Gap and Chartiers are right next door.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I used to play ball down there all the time. It's nice, it's really nice.
Chartiers Park. You probably played ball there.
Yes, right.
I know.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Bill 73.
Bill 73, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title 4 Public Places and Property, Chapter 416, obstructions by deleting sections 416, 14, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 27, adding new chapter 425 entitled Outdoor Dining or Retail Activities in the Public Right of Way.
Motion for a brief discussion.
Second.
Discussion. Councilman Wilson.
Yeah, well,
Motion
pardon me.
approved.
You go, buddy. You go.
Should we do a
Well,
motion to approve first?
We already had that.
yeah, we did.
You
Motion,
said motion.
You said-
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion to approve for a brief discussion.
yeah. I think second.
Good deal?
I figure we'll just, since this will be some technical questions here, we'll just start with the most technical. All right. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilman Coghill. I want to take a moment to thank people that have been working on this bill. But first, I'd like to thank Councilman Kraus, who has been reminding me that he is the original author of Sidewalk Cafe. Is that true?
It is.
I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about that history.
I think it was one of the first bills I wrote, and it was back in 2008 or 9, if I remember correctly. And it was largely, you and I had enough record conversation about permanent structure, and that it was permanent structures being created that actually drove us to write ordinance to define outdoor dining.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to take a second to recognize that, but then also thank everyone that I've been working with. So I want to thank the Department of DOMI, the acting director Lucas and Angie Martinez, and also if others haven't met yet, we have Carolyn Seifert as well there now, and also Allison Harden. I apologize, with the nighttime economy and all the effort that's gone into the creating a bill that also worked with just make sure everyone's incorporated, like PLI. So, here we are, the pandemic happened, there was quick action was taken, and what we're doing here is really just incorporating this as a permanent code, and setting up, a timeline. Hopefully we can work on this so we can get this passed in a timely manner, because the current situation is that DOMI's used their powers to extend the permits for the current operators. And so to incorporate new ones, it's important that we incorporate this code, and most specifically because at URA, there is going to be a grant program that's offered for businesses to apply to this grant program. They have an opportunity to basically purchase what we're calling better street furniture. So I think that's important. I think sometimes, there's been cases where businesses felt they had to, get something up in a timely manner, and to make that look better for the future would be great. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank my Chief of Staff, Sally Stademan, for working tirelessly on this to make sure all the I's were crossed and T's. All the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So let's not have me fumble anymore, and we'll move on to some of the concerns.
Okay, then.
Well, how about I'll motion to amend,
Second.
and then we'll talk about the amendments.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion made and seconded. Councilman Wilson on the amendment.
I'm going to defer to members if anyone has concerns.
Councilman Kraus.
Yeah, no concerns, just some suggestions to be made. I've been kind of beating up Councilman Wilson this morning because it was one of the first pieces of legislation that I wrote, and it was driven by, we had this desire to activate public space in a program that was known as Paris to Pittsburgh. But what we were seeing was anything but Paris to Pittsburgh. I had one business that set up a beach theme on the sidewalk. So they completely closed the sidewalk. They put lifeguard chairs in. They poured sand on the sidewalk. They had fake palm trees and bollards like you would see at a dock. And watching people walk out in the street to get around that and thinking that that was perfectly acceptable to do, those kinds of things. People that were blocking fire exits and creating safety hazards if the building needed to be evacuated in a safe manner. It couldn't be. You'd find yourself running into, people were going to, you talked about street furniture. People were going to Pool City and buying massive, like backyard round glass tables and umbrellas and huge padded chairs. And like they were hanging all over the sidewalk and into the street, creating, a difficulty for people to pass and of course violating federal law and handicap accessibility and all those kinds of things. So anyway, a little bit of the history of how and why we got to write this. If I may, Madam Clerk, can I motion to just make a very small technical amendment on the third page? It is under 425.03 and it is section F. Once you find it, it's just technical in nature. It reads, an application for an outdoor dining and retail license shall include, including, but not limited to. And I would strike the word include along with at a minimum so that it reads shall, including, but not limited to. Read the others. And then I mentioned with Councilman Wilson on the next page, which is under the same section, it is letter G. One of the changes is at a distance determined by the department. And Councilman Wilson, I thought it would be best to actually reference the authority that we're referencing there. And I believe that would be the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. You might want to place in there. And then on the next page, which would be same chapter, letter H, it's the one reservation that I have, and I spoke with Councilman Wilson, and hopefully we'll work through it. It talks about how the space dividers that define your outdoor cafe cannot be bolted down or drilled into the sidewalk or become some kind of permanent structure. And that was one of the reasons that drove me to actually write the original ordinance, is that we were having businesses that were actually bolting in permanent structures into the sidewalk that, even though they weren't in operation, people had to find their way to navigate around these permanent structures. And so if it is the will of the sponsor and the will of the body, I'd actually like to strike, not that I'm motioning for this, but I'd like to discuss it, like it to actually strike without the permission of the department and leave that section remain as is.
Do you want to take that one at a time?
Yeah, I'm
happy to discuss.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to throw it back to you. And then one last thing, which I'm sorry, they're not listed. I mean, numbered the pages. Oh, I'm sorry. This is under 42504 special provisions for outdoor retail display. That was actually written by Councilman Motznick when he was on the council about, again, activating public space so you could set up tables outside and show your wares and those kinds of things. This adds for providing a pedestrian queue space. So to actually queue customers up. And I might be wrong. I could have imagined this, and maybe the clerk would research this for us, but I don't think you're permitted to queue a customer in an LNC. I think it comes under the definition of a takeout window or something along those lines, or it may be limited to an historic district, but somewhere along the way, I just remember, I'm not sure, that we might not be permitted under existing code to actually provide a queue space to line up customers. But those were my only questions, and I applaud the councilman for updating, because it's important. It needs to be updated. I'm going to ask if I can the nighttime economy coordinator to come up for a minute, but it definitely needs to be updated. We are in a completely different arena in 2022 than we were in 2008. And I hope perhaps maybe our nighttime economy coordinator, would you come up, Allison? Will actually speak to, even though we know this well, the hit that food and beverage business has taken during pandemic. And if there's probably anything more important on our agendas right now in terms of assisting with small business. It's to help reinvent and revitalize what food and beverage business is today and how to assist in welcoming them back. But anyway, welcome. Thanks for coming up. I just wanted to provide you the opportunity to speak a little bit about your thoughts on the ordinance and the importance of reinventing is the right word, but assisting the reinvention of food and beverages that exist today in 2022, having gone into the third year of a global pandemic.
You know, I think I'm going to back up and not just be about dining and entertainment, because really what we're talking about is the opportunity for people to connect and socialize. And these are businesses that facilitate that. And I want to thank you all, and thank you for letting me come up and speak. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councilman Wilson, and all of you for all the work that you've done these past couple of really difficult years, not just for businesses, but for us as individuals. I don't know. I don't know what year this was, but Councilman Kraus nominated Pittsburgh for a sociable city contest or an award, and Pittsburgh was given that award. It was the very first sociable city in the US. And a lot of that had to do with, like most cities have just a downtown, and that's where everybody go to have their dining entertainment. But Pittsburgh is so unique in having this in all of their neighborhoods, or most of their neighborhoods, but that is definitely shifting over the years. And we want to make sure that all neighborhoods have places for people to connect and socialize. And the grant that's tied to this bill actually is really looking at that equity piece. The lessons learned from these business districts that have helped facilitate this. We're in a work group with URA to create a technical assistance program that can help those communities that haven't been able to do this, don't have the bandwidth or the staff to do it. I want to go back to the socializing though. I remember back in 2009, there was this study that came about. It was called the Gallup's Psychosocial Study. And it really intrigued me because it said that for individuals' optimum mental and emotional well-being, we need 6 hours of social connection with human beings in person. That's cumulative. It's not saying you have to go out, at happy hour and stay out till midnight, but that is, breakfast with your family, a conversation around the water cooler, the accumulation of those moments contribute to our residents and our visitors' well-being. And this legislation definitely contributes to that. I also want to commend DOMI and our administration and our council for the swift response they had in pulling together a very collaborative team to create the ability to do that under emergency order. And we learned a lot from that experience. We learned that we can be nimble and we can be flexible as a city. And we learned that that process actually works better than what we had. And it's great that we're learning from this and looking to make it permanent, to make it equitable. And I believe it will really contribute to not just the health of our businesses, but to individuals and communities. There's another study that was done by the Knight Foundation called the Soul of the City Study. And they looked at dozens of cities and tens of thousands of individuals fed into this. And then the study was trying to find what made people stay in their community, because they found that people that stayed in their community, it was safer, it was stronger financially, it was just a healthy community. And the number one thing they found that connected people to their communities were places where people could go to connect and socialize, including bars, restaurants, and cafes. And so I think this is, it's really important to all of us. I think it became very apparent during the pandemic how important those 6 hours were. We were very limited to who we could connect with. And I just really appreciate all the thought and that you're giving to this discussion in this bill. Thank you. Mhm.
I may, and then I'll be done. I'll turn it over to members. The question that I raised around the building. One of the things that I remember we ran into with permanent structures like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. One of the things I remember that we ran into in terms of permanent structure was violation of fire code, and that occupancies were granted by points of ingress and egress that would provide for safe evacuation should the building need to be evacuated in an emergency. And so we were finding maybe one storefront had 3 doorways, and that was in keeping with their fire code, but when they bolted in the permanent structure, it only had 1 point of ingress and egress, and that would trigger a reduction in occupancy for that business, because in a need for a safe evacuation, they would not be able to get there. If the barrier is not permanent, God forbid something happens, it would at least fall over if there were a mass exodus or somebody trying to escape a building in an emergency situation. But I remember that being brought up as a very important component as to why we don't want to bolt permanent structures into the sidewalk.
So Kim Lucas, Acting Director for the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. That's a great point about making sure that we're maintaining safety and access. Anything that is being proposed would be reviewed by PLI and DOMI to make sure that nothing that is approved would have those limiting factors. We do think that there's a benefit to having structures that can be bolted. Right now, if the default is using sandbags or other bulky materials that help stabilize some of that infrastructure, but become their own tripping hazards because they take up more space and they are not, permanent. They can easily be moved by passerby, perhaps. We do think it would lead to an actually safer environment by having more substantial infrastructure that does not produce the tripping hazards.
And I love that point. And so I'm going to counter with Allison. I met Allison through the Responsible Hospitality Institute any number of years ago, and Jim Peters is the president, and he and I went to New York to actually view their sidewalk cafes while we were writing this ordinance. And I'm not exaggerating. The sidewalk cafe ordinance in New York City was like this. It was, I cannot tell you what you had to go through. But one of the things that fascinated me about the way New York did it was every barrier was designed exactly the same. There was no differentiation in what you chose to sequester your outdoor dining area. And so they were wrought iron. They were all uniform. They had plates on the bottom for stability so they could not rock or be knocked over. And then everyone had an inset panel that was stretched with the name of the restaurant on it. It made for a stunning effect to see how coordinated it was, how beautiful it actually made it, and the consistency throughout. And it really addressed your point of stability, because we have seen some of that too. Someone decides to define their outdoor space by 5-gallon buckets with womanized lumber poured with sand in it and a yellow chain. Those are the kinds of things that clearly have to be defined. You can't, and I believe we defined a lot of that in the original ordinance, if I remember correctly, at least for historic districts, that they did have to meet the furnishings and the barriers had to meet specific historic guidelines to be able to use in historic districts. But just to enforce your point of safety, yes, but it's not so much, it's really more about defining what the barrier should be and regulating what kind of barrier one can use. But thank you, thank you for coming up. And members, I appreciate your time and allowing me to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Coghill.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Costa. I didn't realize you were the original, he's made that pretty clear though, since we've been here this morning, but and Councilman Wilson, I want to thank you. And as we talked previously, I'd like to be added on as a co-sponsor if you'll have me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Adam Clark. Thank you. So I love them. They add a vibrancy, they add an energy. Allison is from my neighborhood. We see them packing, we see them popping up everywhere. Restaurateurs we've heard from this morning, they're obviously supportive of this effort. This is not quite the time of year, but as soon as spring comes, I know that they're going to be popping up again. So I'm in full support of it. I thank you for being a co-sponsor or allowing me to be a co-sponsor. I did have a couple questions for you, Director, if I would. In order to put something out in front of your storefront, you need a license and a permit.
The license is the term that we're using, I believe, and you need to go to the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure and also to permits, licenses, and inspections.
Okay, so maybe I missed that. A license and a permit is required?
So I think there might just be a nuance here, but the process from start to finish for this would be the first step is to submit an application to DOMI for an outdoor dining and retail permit on One Stop PGH. And then the second step is to submit an application for Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, temporary occupancy permit.
So permit and license, got it. Okay. Art Commission, I see. Does the Art Commission have to approve, like, as Councilman Cross was saying, the type of furniture or?
Let's not even go there.
Well, that's why I wanted to go there, but I just, I kind of was hoping their hands weren't in on this. The Art Commission doesn't have to come in and approve your setup. Is that right? Okay, good enough. That's all I need to know. The other thing was, shall set the type of coverage of insurance required. Is it different in the rate for somebody who's cooking versus somebody who's just selling flowers, or, is there an added, risk?
I believe that Angie, our senior right-of-way manager, has that answer.
Yeah, it's the same insurance requirements for all permittees. And the reason why we word it that way in the code is because those requirements are captured in our fee schedule. So if they were ever to change in the future, we wouldn't have to go and amend, specific sections of code. We would just refer to the fee schedule.
Okay, so set rate for everybody.
For everyone, yeah.
Whether you're cooking or not.
Mhm.
Okay, good enough. The last thing was 18 inches from, no furniture should be within 18 inches of the curb. That's where the city starts, not from the outer curb. That means from I see we're allowing for 4 feet, and that's, I guess, ADA in compliance. And so nothing could be set within 18 inches, which is not a very lot of room, but of the right of way of the city. Is that correct?
So the 18 inches from the face of curb is not for pedestrian access. It's for people getting out of their parked cars, making sure that there's no infrastructure that's so close to that face of curb that a user of the roadway or cartway would have a negative conflict with it.
Oh, so you're talking about tables on the street, not necessarily
No,
between.
we're talking about the sidewalk,
Yeah.
but we're talking about space between, the activation and the curb, not as necessarily space for a pedestrian to move through. That was the 4-foot dimension that you mentioned. It's instead in relation to what's happening in the roadway. If we have parked cars next to the curb, they need that space to be able to open their car door. And we want to make sure that there's also visibility for sight distance and safe roadway operations and things of that nature.
Extra hour on the weekends, Friday, Saturday till 11 o'clock. I like that. Are storefronts required to bring all furniture inside after 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock?
Yes, for, as this is written for the outdoor retail use, those are, the tables, the clothes rack, things of that nature can only be out there during hours of operation and then need to be put inside.
This is the only part that I'm going to bring up here where I feel it may create potential conflicts. Applicants' food prepared outside premises require notarization and consent from the adjacent building owners. So if my neighbor doesn't like me and doesn't want me cooking outside, they can, I'm not allowed? How's that work?
Sure.
I need their consent?
I'm not allowed. Would you permit?
Derogatory?
I think that it's more about that's more about food prep, odor wafting into other businesses and those kinds of things. And, you may have a very high-end dress shop next to a restaurant or a barbecue. And perhaps maybe they would not, outdoor barbecuing would affect their ability to conduct their business. And I think that's one of the many reasons why wanting to get the buy-in of businesses that are on either side of you, if you're actually doing food preparation outside, not just serving food, but preparing food, why you would want your adjoining businesses to support you.
No, makes complete sense. However, If you have a neighbor that you're not friendly with, and is it required to have the consent of adjacent building owners in order for you to set up or no?
That requirement is specific to the outdoor cooking use, and it's for exactly some of those reasons that Councilman Kraus mentioned, is the odor, the smoke, the nuisance sort of things that could impact a neighbor. So that, petition, that actual formal sign off is required, but only when cooking is the use that's being
So
requested.
it is required from each neighbor as to, before you're cooking outside, you need their permission in order to move forward.
Yes, and this is existing policy around what is in the original code as extension of premise with cooking, that is just reappearing in this version as outdoor retail with cooking. So it's an existing provision that people have complied with, and we would like to carry over into this new version of the program.
Okay, I just see that being a problem somewhere along the line with unfriendly neighbors, for whatever reasons.
It should come back to council then.
What's that?
It should come back to council.
Yeah, well, that would be fine. I mean, if we could, so that's it for me. You answered my questions. That's the one that's left out there for me. If my neighbor and I don't get along and he or she decides, hey, I don't want you cooking out there, it creates a problem, I think. But okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of the people who participated in this. Councilman Wilson mentioned, and of course to Councilman Kraus for originating the sidewalk cafe legislation. And it just really strikes me that that was a very different moment. So it was many, many years before DOMI was even created. So we not only are in a different moment because of the pandemic, we're in a different moment organizationally and administratively as well. And so I think it's wonderful that there's now the capacity to manage these situations. And I think that's why I'm comfortable with these updates. I really do like the idea of a consistent design standard or even design materials. And maybe we have not just one, but maybe a menu of ranges of affordability, but that was some of the feedback that we've gotten from residents and business districts, is that it can be looking a little messy, frankly, right? Visually. And so for the safety reasons and for just kind of consistency, and it also helps a business that is trying to do these kinds of things just, have options instead of having to try to research and invent it itself on what would be compliant. So I really would love to work further on that idea, that we can set forward some materials and designs that would make it actually possibly easier to create these outdoor retailing situations. I do understand. I'm glad we had the discussion about permanent bolting in, but I'm also supportive for the reasons that were mentioned. And I do want to mention that I think because of the pandemic, not being just a few weeks, or a few months, which it seemed like it might have been, was going to be in 2020, that now we're in 2022. And it's really important, as one of my staff members pointed out to me, it's important for the safety of the restaurant workers that there be an increase in this outdoor seating accommodation, especially, and for workers, right? So that they're not all in an indoor situation. And so I'm really glad that we should support and try to even expand the use of the sidewalk area where we can with all of the safety considerations. And similarly for queuing, I was really grateful myself for the restaurants that maybe they had closed their dining room, but you could still get takeout. And even if they didn't do delivery themselves, you could go up. And so I've got restaurants who kind of created like a half window situation, or they put some plexiglass and there was a table and you could slide it up. And it really made customers feel safe, and it made the workers feel safe as well. So there's limited contact. But some of these restaurants are very popular. So it's true, they are actually doing takeout windows. But again, we're in a very different situation. And so if there is a problem with current code, I think we should work through that to keep allowing them. There's a very popular destination on Liberty Avenue that is a very long line in the morning. We want to make sure there's clearance. I think this putting it in the ordinance will actually help make sure they can manage that line and that queuing while keeping safe passage for NADA compliance. So I'm glad to see that we're moving these things forward. So I'm supportive today. And if the sponsor would agree, I would love to be added as a co-sponsor as well. I really appreciate all the work that went into this. And it's sad but true. We're in 2022, and this is accommodations that we need to continue to make. But for all the reasons Director Harnden mentioned, this is actually kind of part of what we've been encouraging in a 15-minute city, a walkable city, a city where people do have the ability to have social interactions in a safe way, and to keep Pittsburgh a friendly city. It's a city of neighbors, neighborhoods that are actual neighbors. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Any other members? Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to everyone who's worked on this bill and has supported it and has written the precursor to this bill, everyone. I echo a lot of what I've heard today. And I guess my only question is both, I guess, in the bill update, but also the permitting and licensing itself, what is built into it to ensure that accessibility for like ADA accessibility is part of the thought process and is integrated into this? So everything from wheelchair access to those with visual impairment. I see it throughout the bill and I see it throughout the amendments, but I just wonder if you could speak for a moment as to how you think about that as being integrated.
I think that accessibility is of the utmost importance for this work. Changing a use of the public space and converting what had been sidewalk to something else, that's probably the number one concern. We do have a review by the ADA coordinator as part of one of our steps in the process. So DOMI, PLI, and the ADA coordinator who sits within the Department of City Planning. In terms of design, I've heard a couple folks mention today that there's a desire for more consistency in the infrastructure that's used in the design of these outdoor activations. And through this work and through the work of the Urban Redevelopment Authority and that $1 million that they received in grant funding, we hope to have a design guideline and standard that comes out that recommends specific materials and specific stanchions or what have you that would be appropriate. And all of that to further the accessibility and consistency and predictability of what you encounter in the public space.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Before second round, I have a question. Who's in charge of enforcement?
That's a great question. So we have enforcement and responsibility is shared across multiple entities. So when it comes to enforcement of the physical footprint and making sure that it's not impeding on the public space, the clear pedestrian space, DOMI's inspectors are responsible for that component. When it comes to there is a need for after hours inspections and because that's when these spaces are probably going to be most active, is not during the typical work day for a lot of our inspectors. And so that is a concern we've heard by council and something that we strive to achieve. When it comes to the actual activities within that footprint, there's different entities. If they have the proper tables and they're spaced properly and they're not having food safety hazards and things like that, there's the county, there's PLI. If you have an issue with spillover of intoxicated patrons and things like that, then you've got public safety. And so there are a number of different enforcement entities that have to work together to make sure that the impacts of any of these outdoor activations don't have a negative impact on the surrounding individuals or spaces.
Thank you. Second round, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clean up, the conversation when we were talking, just so I'm on the same page. So this concern about permanent structure, that you're good with that?
I'm not.
I'm sorry, can we have an interrogative?
I'm not, but that's okay. We don't have to do that today. We can pass it as amended and we can work on this, you and I together.
Okay, and same with the queue?
Yeah, I don't have a reservation about Q. I'm wondering if we're not in conflict with existing code.
Check on that code, yeah.
And I might be a little more I would be a little more comfortable if we could define perhaps the necessary width of a sidewalk to permit queue. You go in the 1600 block of Carson and we have a 3.5-foot sidewalk. And so, and many businesses already queue there as it is. And then you see people physically walking in Carson Street to avoid the queue that's lined up. And then the only other suggestion I would make, and again, we'll take this offline and you and I talk about it. The outdoor dining and retail have different impacts at different times of the day that it operates. So while something operating at 9 o'clock in the morning is going to have a different impact than something operating at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and something that's operating at midnight. One of the issues that we had, which brought us to writing the original ordinances, is that the cafes were drifting. And they were drifting well into the public space late at night. People are drinking, they're having a good time, they're not paying attention, and things begin to expand. And police officers were saying to us, we can't navigate this space in the event of an emergency where people are going to be falling over tables and chairs, and our officers are, are unable to do the work we need to do because of the impact it's having on the public space. So, the idea of time it's operating, it does have different impacts. And I'd just like to discuss that with you a little bit further, but I'm happy to pass as is today. And then perhaps you and I will.
Okay, happy to work with you. I just want to make some unless others have comments, I'm going to make my final comment, which is, and Domi, if you could correct me, shake your head no if I'm getting something wrong here. So currently, if we pass this next week, it would go into effect 30 days after. And this would speak to new businesses, the outdoor dining and retail that would want to be a part of this. So the current ones, other than updating or making sure we have the correct insurance on file, that they would just continue as is because there's been very little complaints from them. But everyone would have the opportunity to apply for the grant at the URA, and that's the whole point of this, is just so it can be an equitable process, and everyone can be included. Did I miss anything? Or did I get something wrong?
The URA and the stewardship over that grant is not something that I have much influence over, but yes, that's my understanding. And yes, the current permits, 75, I believe, temporary permits were granted over the last 2 years as a COVID response. 55 of those have been renewed based on engaging with those businesses and then providing the important and necessary insurance requirements, updated, et cetera. So their permit's good till the end of this calendar year.
Okay, great. I just wanted to, speak to the businesses that currently are operating like this and just make sure they know, if for some reason they're listening and they can hear that. So, all right, well, thank you for everything you did. And, I just know just from if I visit another city or if I talk to friends who visit another city and they're activating the space around a business, whether it's the sidewalk, the parking spaces, or the street in some cases, they all return and go, why can't we have this in Pittsburgh? And so that's why a big thing is I think Pittsburgh could really be leading the way for activating our outdoor space. And I think we're joining a lot of other cities in this respect. And I'm looking forward to continuing doing that. I know it saved a lot of north side businesses, and it's going to take years for these businesses to recover and to maintain their everything that requires to run that business. So thank you. Thank everyone.
May I just one last thing, I swear to God, I'm going to stop. There's a permanent structure. I'd like to just show you a picture that is bolted into a sidewalk that has been there probably the better part of a year now, unused. The materials are god awful. They're womanized lattice, and people fall over it all the time. And so the idea of of this, once again, creating permanence and structure that goes unused, it's falling apart. This is an old picture, but one of the panels is missing on it, and it's hanging in the middle of nowhere for no purpose at all. That's my reservation of creating permanent structure without some level of criteria. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman.
Seeing no further, Councilman Cox?
No, I just, real quickly, Director, maybe you explained this, but as far as what Councilwoman Gross and Kraus were saying about the aesthetics, do we have something in place now, or are we creating something? Okay, yeah, I love the idea of wrought iron, black wrought iron, but yeah, we can't have that. So, okay, that's all. I just didn't know if something was in place or not. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 You opposed?
I think that was just amended.
It was just
Oh,
amendment.
I apologize.
Motion to,
We spent
Sorry.
2 hours on something
Yeah.
we all were voting for. I just want to say.
So the bill has been amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended.
Your mic is on.
I learned what the queue was today. I never knew that. I don't think I've ever been in one. So that's
Takes us to Bill 77.
Bill 77, ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code Title I, Administrative Article 3, Organization, Chapter 118, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure by adding 11803 Infrastructure Asset Reporting.
We in my committee still?
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve.
A second discussion.
Discussion?
Councilman O'Connor, the primary sponsor, am I?
I believe Councilwoman Strasburger is as well. I believe she's going to offer up amendments.
Okay, you're going to do, perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
motion to amend.
Are we on both bills or just one? I'm sorry. 7 to 7?
Second.
Strasburger?
I know it is the primary bill sponsors' desire to amend the bills today and then have a full discussion, hold for 1 week and have a full discussion next week when he's here. He, as you know, has been talking to many members this morning. Many have expressed questions, concerns. I can address them to a certain extent. We have Matt Singer here as well, Councilman's Chief of Staff. But I know his desire to discuss this next week.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
I have a question. Is there the departments for either bill, the departments that will be affected by it, are they online? Or here?
We have Ms. Director Lucas with us.
Yes.
Let's see who else.
I can do it this bill or next bill. It doesn't matter. How many bridges do we have in Pittsburgh?
In the city of Pittsburgh, there are over 400 bridges owned by multiple entities. The city owns between 130 and 140 of those bridges are owned by the city of Pittsburgh.
So there are 400 bridges owned by this in the city.
Mhm.
About 150 of them owned by Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
What's the condition overall of those 400 bridges?
I do not have that information in front of me right now, so I don't want to misspeak.
Is that online already?
It is. So if you check out the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, who is the entity that is engaged in the bridges that fall within the National Bridge Inspection Standard requirement, of which any bridge that's 20 feet or greater in span and affects our highway/roadways, all of that information is publicly accessible right now, their conditions and their locations.
And so my real interest is actually the second bill, not really the first bill. The only thing is, I think for the second bill, I'll talk about why I did not write a bill that looks like this. When the bridge collapsed in my district too, which I've been very quiet about it, although I do share that bridge. Because I view my role as to be helpful. And so if there is something that's an emergency, if I can't be helpful, I'll just be quiet. There are 300 bridges, 150 owned by the city of Pittsburgh, probably, I can't remember the number, maybe 70, 80% of them in some form of disrepair, something like that, right? Something like that. So we're talking about we're talking probably about $1 billion of infrastructure dollars necessary to fix these bridges, right? Those are just the bridges. That's just the bridges. There's other infrastructure problems. I want to be clear to the public that when we do these sort of knee-jerk reactions, that we're not going to fix these bridges this way. There is going to need to be a massive amount of government resources to fix these bridges. And so when we have, I'm a big believer in fixing things. And I'm also a real big believer in not giving false hope, not doing something for the sake of doing something if it's not going to have impact. We, the city, do not have the money to fix the infrastructure. That money is going to have to come from state and federal sources. We got blessed that the federal government is fixing the Fern Hollow Bridge, right? And that money is federal money coming through the state, coming to us. And so shortly after this, we have these new bills come, and I'm not against it. I'm the commission, particularly, I agree with Council, she hasn't said it yet, but I agree with Councilwoman Gross. It is something actually council could have done without this commission. Don't need it, not necessary. But if we want to do it, it's fine. The second bill, though, I have some serious problems with. And so I will support this first bill with the understanding that it will have very little impact. It will not fix these bridges. It will not generate the money to fix these bridges. It is a committee that will be a committee and talk. It will not fix these bridges. And so I just want to make sure that we're clear about this. This is not a solution to the infrastructure of the city of Pittsburgh. It can be helpful. It can have conversations. It will not in any way fix our infrastructure problems. And so I think conversations are helpful and recommendations, but this is a financial problem, not a policy problem. We do not have the resources to fix the infrastructure. The city does not have it. We don't have it. We don't have the money to fix the bridges that we own, let alone the bridges we don't control. We don't have the resources. And so we need to be very clear about the purpose of this and know it, because I think, you know, the public is scared. I'm scared too, right? I'm scared. That bridge, my sister-in-law travels it every day. She just happened not to be there that day because she was off. The same time every day, the time that bridge collapsed, normally Monday through Friday or wherever, she's a nurse, so whatever her schedule is, she's on that bridge. I know that some of the people who are on the bridge that were hospitalized, my heart goes out to them. I pray for them. I'm glad there was no loss of life. But equally, I get a little suspicious when we create things that don't fix problems. I get suspicious when we have things that don't fix problems, when the problems are significant and serious. And this will not fix problems. And this problem we have is significant and serious. And actually, the bill sponsor, if it was serious enough for him to write it and make a rare appearance to our council's chambers, should be here to talk about that bill.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, I can speak to the entire bill as well next week, but I just want to make sure that, are you in communication? Is Domi in communication with the sponsor of the bill so that we are ensuring that, like, if there's something that comes up, like we have to add staff? Because ultimately, I've had a conversation with Domi for quite some time about getting a bridge in my district done. And quite frankly, we're not, they're overworked already. The same engineer that's got to report to this website, will they also be still working on trying to execute my contract so that I get my bridge done? Swindell Bridge specifically, that's down the, one lane of traffic. That's my concern. So I want to get an accounting of how much time this is going to take away, because most of this is duplicated. This is going to be a duplicative, it's transparency from what's already on another website. So I just like some clarity on that. I know the sponsors in here, but so we can address this next week. But are you in communication to make sure that we're if we had to add staff, like I want to do the will of, the current mayor, the council. I mean, they're the one, the member whose bridge is in the district. I mean, I just want to make that clear.
We would need additional people. You're right. We have a chief engineer who's responsible for 800 sets of public steps, over 130 bridges, landslide remediation, of which we can't predict all of them. And we do have a backlog that need to be fixed, and new construction projects. So we have very limited resources. And even for reports that exist, as I mentioned, PennDOT has the public facing bridge data for all of the bridges that have to meet the MBIS requirement. Even for data that exists, it will take time in some cases to interpret it. It will take time to aggregate it if it's being requested in a new format. And so and at this point, if there is not an increase in resources to do that, we will have to turn someone away from what they're already doing to be able to achieve this.
Yeah, that's my concern.
I just want to remind everyone that we could be facing some significant lawsuits about our infrastructure. I don't think this is a conversation we should be having at the table right now. I think what we ought to do is we're holding the bill. Let's work with the sponsor. And then let's have the discussion. But right now, I think we just got to be careful what we say.
Looking forward to seeing how we just create the best department of mobility and infrastructure possible so that our engineers have everything they need to ensure the safety of the residents of Pittsburgh. I'll stop commenting.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Councilman Kraus.
No, just one bill, one amendment. Ready to
Yes.
vote? I'm ready.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The bill is amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended?
Motion to hold 1 week.
Motion to hold 1 week.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill be held 1 week. Thank you. That takes us to Bill 78.
Bill 78, ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code Title I Administrative Article 9, Boards, Commissions, and Authorities by adding Chapter 179H, Commission on Infrastructure Asset Reporting and Investment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Councilwoman Strasburger?
Motion to amend.
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? Councilwoman Strasburger?
I too want to, or as we did with the last bill, I will be motioning to hold 1 week so we can have a full discussion. I just didn't want to let some of the comments I heard go unaddressed, whether or not they were directed at me. I am a co-sponsor of the bill, and I don't want to pretend that either of these pieces of legislation are going to solve anywhere near the problem that we have on our hands. Fully recognize that. The reason I signed on as a co-sponsor is that we have to do what's in our power. And I do see that, at least when it comes to a commission, for instance, we have a shade tree commission that does orders of magnitude more than our forestry department is able to accomplish. They're able to be advocates for trees. They're able to be advocates for shade trees in our neighborhoods, and procure funding for that. We have a Clean Pittsburgh Commission that's able to do orders of magnitude more than a single anti-litter coordinator can do. And in the same way, I think that an infrastructure commission could be advocates and could do a lot of the work that we don't have the capacity to do, and even additional DOMI staff probably could not do. And I'd like to just explore the idea. I am absolutely interested in talking this through and making it work for our department heads, for our departments, for our staff, and for council, so as not to take away power from council, and so as not to take an issue that is largely out of our hands in a lot of ways when it comes to funding, and pretend as if that is going to be solved by this, but to do what we can and to ensure that we're approaching this very, very important discussion of infrastructure in a methodical and sensible way.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill?
Yes. I want to thank Councilman O'Connor. He really did take a leadership role when that bridge collapsed. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to the bills if, I don't know, do we need the sponsor's approval for that, or?
So noted.
So, I think it's out of abundance of caution, as to having another set of eyes on these bridges. Director, you had mentioned that you would need more resources. In talking to the sponsor, I didn't he didn't relay that to me, that there would be additional resources needed. I mean, I understand maybe just somebody's laying eyes on the bridges itself and giving a determination. And we do have structural engineers, I believe. And so can you explain as to what additional position or how you feel you might need more resources?
So the language has a number of reporting requirements, and for the commission itself, wants 2 DOMI staff members to participate. And so
Okay.
It would require
I'm
2
being
DOMI
told by leadership that
Okay.
for some reason you shouldn't be speaking on this.
I
Is
think that
what
we need
you're
to
asking me?
talk to the law department about what we can and cannot say about infrastructure at the table.